All right, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Welcome to the number one show, by the way, on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. To my regular listeners, here we go again. Here we go again. You know how we get down here. We just give you the straight, raw, honest advice, and we bring on people that have just done incredible work and are here to help you. All right, we're here to help you become more efficient in your businesses, become more efficient in your organizations, the whole nine. All right. So today we are going to dive deeper into now I've spoken about this in the past, but I have an expert on the subject about the importance of recognizing your KPIs and knowing your KPIs and how that leads to a culture within your work environment that makes it so every single person feels heard, every single person feels like they're part of the company, because so often that is the case. The problem with businesses is they start making people feel like they're not a part of the organization. So with all that, Mr. Adam Sinkus, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on. Excited to be here. And leadership and metrics is like one of my favorite topics to talk about.
Yes, I'm glad you actually brought up metrics, because we have been swallowed up in this social media fueled world where you get so many young people who think that getting a bunch of likes and followers on social media, they pay so much attention to those metrics. But when it comes to the receipts, the metrics that matter, that is something that concept to them is very foreign. So when it comes to you, I know personally what got me interested in this work is seeing how bad being burnt, not just seeing, but being burnt by horrible leadership, being burnt by bosses that don't give a shit, being burnt by people that just want to make a dollar. And I'm curious now, what's your background? How did you get into this world where now it's something that you feel obligated to teach to as many people as humanly possible?
Yeah, so my background, I came from the call center industry, and I don't know if you've ever worked in call centers or listeners, if you've ever worked in call centers, but it is brutal. And one of the things that happens a lot in call centers, and it actually happens a lot in business now, is that we have this thing where we take the best performer and we go, well, you did really good on your numbers, so now you're the new manager, right?
Oh, I did. I did. Well, it's not a call center, but there's something similar. I worked at LA Fitness, and that right there was the problem. You had a front desk person, you had a sales person, you had the person cleaning up the gym, then you had a personal trainer director, and a director of personal trainers. All right, if your numbers are good, all of a sudden you're ready to lead people. What this, like that doesn't qualify you to be a manager, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. And so the problem we have is this self-perpetuating because those managers then do really good. And their managers are like, oh, your team's numbers are great. You must be great at leading a team. So then you get moved up and you get moved up. And
Right,
it's a self-perpetuating problem of leaders that aren't prepared to lead at the levels that they're at.
right.
And so, what we see in a lot of first line leaders in this instance is we see um the well, I did it this way
Hmm.
and it worked for me. So now, team, you go out and do it exactly this way because it's going to work for you, right? And everybody's an individual, and we have to, as leaders, we have to understand that all our teams are built up of individuals that maybe need to process information in different ways, need to approach information in different ways.
Hmm.
Uh, and so, what happens? Well, that team starts to falter and fail because now the only style of leadership is do it my way or the highway.
Right. But what you're talking about, that has become so common though across multiple industries. And it's because it is about the money. It's about oh, well, this person sold this much, so all of a sudden you think you're ready. What do you think is a way of kind of creating some pushback to that? Because it's hard to argue with people. It's hard to really create an argument with folks who, like, I'll give you an example. I had speaking of LA Fitness. Now, the person that hired me to work at LA Fitness, good guy, but you could tell that he had the position just because of sales. And the only thing that he did to try to keep us motivated was say, hey, at 26, I was making six figures. Well, okay, it worked out for you like that. It worked out because that was something you had to do, but other people have options. Me personally, I wanted to use the gym to create opportunities in sports and things like that. how do you sort of create a pushback towards that type of thinking to where people who have the talent to do numbers, they're obviously talented at something, but they need to become overall well-rounded leaders? How do you, employ that or sort of, I guess, create some sort of a teaching tool for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I think, the number one thing we need to do is we need to realize that as an organization, we need to train people, right? We need to invest in training.
Mhm.
And, that looks like a couple of things. One, that looks like, upskilling the people that want to be upskilled to those leadership roles, right? So that now becomes your pool of people we pull leaders from instead of just the best performer, right? Obviously we want to pull our best performer from that pool of people that are trained, but now we have a pool of people that are trained. So that's number one. Number two, education doesn't stop once you become a leader, right? A lot of times we put our leaders in place. We're like, great, you're a leader, starting to lead the team, team's doing great things. And then, all the focus is back on the work that needs to be done, not on developing the people that are doing the work, right? And so, um, training doesn't stop just because you got the role of a leader now, right? And so you should always be looking for opportunities to upskill, whether that be yourself or whether that be your company.
Mhm.
Um, Different opportunities for different things depending on what you want to do.
Mhm.
And then I think the last piece is incredibly important is your senior leadership as a senior leader. The senior leadership should be doing skip levels with
Mhm.
your team, right? And this is that realistic pulse check on who you are and how you're doing as a leader.
Mhm.
Uh, the types of questions they should be asking is, what is your leader doing to help you succeed? How is your leader helping you move forward in the company? What do you like that your leader's doing for you? What do you dislike that your leader's doing for you? And then sharing that feedback so that growth can happen in that leader. So those are kind of three really key strategies in developing leaders and keeping them developed.
No, this is actually the first time I've ever heard of the concept of skip levels. So, can you kind of provide an example on what that would actually look like for a company that may be interested in doing? Because this is actually, yeah, I'm learning, I'm learning like you listeners right now. So that's a lot, man. Yeah.
Yeah, skip levels super easy concept. It's literally when you look at levels of leadership in an organization, right? You have your frontline employees, you got a frontline team leader maybe, then
Mhm.
you got maybe a director or a senior manager that's over a group of team leaders, right?
Right.
And it goes up the ladder. The idea is that, the as a team leader, right, my senior manager is going to take time and meet with my teams. That can be done one on one, or it can be done as a group, right? Where they just set up a skip level like roundtable session and just have some conversation about it, right? The structure of those conversations is what's important,
Mhm.
and it's less about the numbers because as a senior manager, they should already know what the performance looks like far before they walk into that meeting, right? It's more about gathering the behaviors and the feelings and the culture of the team and understanding is this leader effectively leading the people, or are there problems that are causing our numbers or whatever to be impacted?
I think that's so important what you said because even coming up, I have a football background, and our coach would always tell us we're only as good as our weakest link. We had a absolute stud and a football player. His name was Surly Monzi, and he would tell us all the time, "Look, goes down, you can't play, something goes wrong, I mean, gets car trouble on the way to the game. We gotta have people that can step in and fill those positions." And you mentioned just looking at numbers. And I have to explain to there was another situation that I've been a part of. It was at Orange. Well, you're in Florida, so you already know Orange Theory Fitness is an incredibly popular fitness studio out here. And that was my first job when I got to Florida about 6 or 7 years ago now. And this particular studio that I worked at, what they would do, we would always hit our goal, right? Hit our goal, quote unquote, but they would be doing it in a roundabout way. And this is important for a lot of you business owners to understand because what he said is very powerful. we would be basically, now I was there for maybe 7 or 6 months, but I saw the game. The point of, being a sales associate at Orange Theory is to go out and get new people to come to the gym. Yet there was members there, people that made it so they can work around the system and just sell repacks to the people that were already members in the gym. So it looked like our numbers were good. It looked like we were hitting our goal, but new people weren't coming to the gym. And had it not been for like the head corporate person meeting with low or having conversations with sales associates, then you just wouldn't know because you're just looking at the numbers. So I ask you now, with that in mind, how do you and that's Orange Theory. We're not a Fortune 500 company. It's not like, we have communication with the franchise owner. How do you expect the like big companies to do it? Like, how do you expect Phil Knight to come and go and talk to the cashier at the Nike outlet? That's right here in Florida. How do you sort of create that communication?
Yeah, so one thing you can do is you can create opportunities to meet with more senior leadership, right? And that can look like open door, something like an open door connect where once a month you have a limited number of slots and you send an email communication out to
Yes,
everybody and go,
right.
you know, here's all our leaders. Who do you want to meet with? What do you want to talk about? And you send, and it basically is an invitation to open up a calendar meeting to have a one-on-one conversation with that person, right?
Mhm.
That we find is a more effective use of in like the corporate space of those very very senior leaders than trying to have them come in and do roundtables with our frontline employees, right?
Right.
Town halls or some sort of larger staff meeting,
Right.
incredibly important. Visibility is the key there, right? And so you see that quarter like a lot of companies run like a quarterly town hall, right? And once a quarter the senior leadership comes in, they talk about the state of the business, what's
Mhm.
going on, culture and values,
Right.
and then another piece that I think it often gets overlooked that's important on these is recognition, right? So who are we recognizing on the teams as we meet together?
Mhm.
And so, I think you know, I think those are kind of some of the keys there of how do you get the visibility of the senior leadership doing some of that skip level work.
Mhm.
Really, it's not their role to do the skip level work, right? They're going to skip level down a couple tiers of management and talk to maybe the directors or the senior managers, but very unlikely that they directly would do a skip level roundtable with frontline employees. And it's not because they're better than them or anything like that. It's all about time, bandwidth, and what's expected in their role.
Right. You also actually mentioned something else that I want you to touch on too, in terms of the store level employees or the manager level employees is don't make things boring. Don't make things routine about like, meetings that you have regularly, whether it's a meeting every morning. Don't call it like a meeting just where it's morning. You actually have tactical things in which, your store level managers who may not get the corporate support. You may be in an area of the world where you're not going to get a lot of a huge budget and you got to do a lot of things on your own. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit about, just store level employees that need help right now and they're not getting the support that they're going to be getting that they need from the corporate level?
Yeah, absolutely. So number one, I think it's opening communication. In that case, most retail have like the store level and then they've got a district level and then a regional level, right? So I think as a store employee, it's important to advocate for yourself, right? So if you're not getting the support that you need, it's okay to skip levels as long as you've attempted to follow the proper chain, right? Don't just go skip levels because that bruises egos, and
Mm-hmm.
when egos get in the way, it
Definitely
ruins
does,
everything,
right?
right?
Right.
You know, but if you've made the attempts, go to the next level, right? Go have that conversation. Eventually, you will find a leader that cares enough about this to take action upon it, right? So
Right.
that's number one. Number two is don't wait for people to help you get you to where you want to go,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
This is like the biggest mistake I see line level, frontline, early employees make, right? Is they're sitting there, they're doing a great job, and they never tell their boss their manager, their whoever, that they want to go be this role,
Hmm.
right? They want to go be the next store manager. They want to go be the next district manager, right? They never communicate that.
Right.
What happens is you never empower your leaders to help you get there when you don't make that effort. So,
Very true.
and then I think the last piece is um, recognizing your own actions as an individual
Hmm.
compared to what's happening with the leader, right?
Right.
And I say that in the, yeah, I think the best example of this is as an employee, right? A lot of times we go, and go to our manager, go, I got this problem,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And who's the best people on a team to solve a problem? Not the manager,
Right.
right? It's the people doing the work, right? So effectively, by you as an employee coming to them and going, I got a problem, you're probably the first person they would ask if they needed a solution to this problem and they found it first, right? So I always, work with my team to encourage a problem solution mindset, right? So identify the problem and come to me with at least one solution.
Yes.
Right?
You're making me think of one of my favorite authors, Seth Godin, Purple Cow, Lynchpin, and he has this famous quote where he goes, he was referring to employees and when they make the excuse of saying, "Oh, I would love to do that, but my boss won't let me. I love to do this, but my boss won't let me." All the excuse, and he kind of debunks that and says what people are really saying is no one's given me an effective place to hide. Because essentially, what you're telling your boss is, I want to do something really cool. I want to do something really exciting. And if it works, you'll get the credit. And if it doesn't, you'll get the blame because you said it was okay. All right. And what you're saying touches on that as a store level employee. If you're good at what you do, all right, and you know if you're good at what you do. Speaking of Nike, there's a Nike factory out of not too far from where I'm at. And I remember going in there, me being a runner, and there was a person that walked me through everything that I needed to know about running. How much do you pronate? How much you pointed me in the right direction? Then I went back to that store to somebody else. He had no fucking clue what the hell. He's just there getting the check. He had no idea. I was like basically had to buy the shoes on my own. And I thought to myself, I'm like, man, if I'm Phil Knight, how do I know the difference? How do I know who's representing my company? But the person who has the ability, if you have the solution, go create solutions. And don't worry about stepping on toes. Don't worry about, whose feelings you're going to hurt and egos and all that because you've put in the self-development work. And that leads me to kind of the next point I want you to touch on is how do we prepare people for that? Because the school system doesn't. I'm sorry, the school system does not. Our system, or we're socialized to be employees. We're socialized to be the person that just has a job, take orders from somebody, and leave it at that. It takes some really deep, whether it's professional development, personal development. Some shit has to happen to a person to make them say, "I'm gonna start sticking up for myself, develop some backbone, and not let." This boss or this manager just walk all over me, even though I know I'm just as qualified as they are.
Yeah, it's a great question. I want to start with I think it's really important to understand and figure out if you're actually in a hostile situation, right? And there's a lot of leaders that unfortunately have set up very hostile work environments.
Right.
And it's very true. Employees don't leave companies, employees leave bad bosses, right? And so the reality is I think we have to understand that self-awareness piece and go, am I in a hostile situation where no matter what I do, it's
Mhm.
never going to be good enough or allow me to progress down the path that I want to be on, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and that's not to say that the grass is always greener on the other side. The next company you go to, there's always going to be challenges, right? But
Mhm.
if you have a boss that is very clearly stymieing your progress forward by not providing you the tools to do your job, not providing you the training, not providing you opportunities to upskill, things like that, um, it's time to look at it and go, is it really worth me being here and putting myself in this position?
Mhm.
Right? Because eventually that's going to blow up and you're going to either lose your job because somebody's ego got bruised or
Right.
uh or the store closes or whatever, right?
Yeah,
Um,
normally it is the latter. I mean, I've worked in six different gyms that have gone out of business, and it had the same. It was like the same things. Each manager, every single time, you were just too damn stubborn to listen to anybody. You want to be the boss? Okay, your business fails.
yep, exactly. And so that's number one, right? So number two is as an employee, you have to empower yourself first, right? You can't expect your boss um, to drag you down the path, right? Kicking and screaming, going, "Yep, we're gonna sign you up for manager school. Come on, let's go." Right?
Not gonna
Uh,
happen. I love
not
that you
gonna
said
happen.
that too. Yes, it will
You
not.
know,
This is not
not,
football. I mean, and that's something I have myself had to get used to because again, a former football player, you get coaches that want to win. They don't do it for the money. They just they do it for the competition and to win a championship. So that was an adjustment myself I had to make when I got into the working world.
yeah. And it's not that they don't want to, it's not that they aren't equipped to, it's that you're one of 8, 10, 12, 15 people.
Mhm.
And if they took all of their time trying to drag the people down the paths that they think they should go, they'd never be able to get their own work done as well, right? So that's, you have to go and say, I want to do this. This is my goal. You should be having a goals conversation, whether you as the employee engage it or whether your leader engages it
Got
at
it.
least a couple times a year, you know.
You should be. That is important. That is very important. I'm glad that you emphasize that. A goals conversation. Business owners, if you want retention, if you want to stop having to replace people, just sit down and talk to your people about what their goals are. Just, hey, what do you want to do? Let's see if there can be an alignment with my company, my vision, with your goal, and then we can create a partnership. Maybe it's not a situation where you quit and leave, or you can create some residual income because what you want, you could sell this product. Just have a damn conversation. Stop being so stuck in your own way. I love that you mentioned that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And then I think the last piece is not being afraid to advocate for yourself,
Mhm.
right? You and that can look like, I want to move up. What do I need to do? What's the next step I need to take to
Mhm.
get that done, right? You know. And I'm going to caveat all this with, you have to look at your employer, you have to look at your work, your workplace, and you have to realize that a lot of times there's limits on where we can go, right? And think of it as a pyramid, right? Everybody comes in at the bottom level, line level, right? And that's the foundation of every business.
Right.
But as you move up in management, right, there's less and less and less positions, and so at a certain point, you will cap out. Most everybody will cap out
Mhm.
in a role, to a point where they can't move any further forward with the company. And that's when you have to look at it as an employee, go, am I going to be able to get to my goal with
Right.
this company at this point, right? Or in the timeline that I want to get it done, you know.
Got it.
Sometimes it's not whether the positions are available, it's when the positions are available. And that could be, if you have a company that's great on retention, you
Mhm.
might have managers that have been there for 10, 15, 20 years, and they're not going anywhere, right? And they're happy where they're at. And so at that point, you got to look at it and go, okay, well, there's 4 manager positions,
Mhm.
and the least senior one has been here 10 years.
Exactly.
Probably going to be another 10 years before I have an opportunity to move into that role, right? Unless we do some miraculous growing, right? And so, that's a point where you have to look at it and go, is this still the right place for me? It's not a bad leadership issue. It's actually probably the opposite. There's probably
Right.
phenomenal leadership. It's
Right.
is this preventing me from moving into the space that I want to be into?
Yeah, I actually had a client when I was a trainer at Nine Run. I had a client, she works at City Furniture, and she met her husband at City Furniture. And she was telling me how much money the company actually spends on professional development. And that's one of the reasons she's been able to build a home and, start a family and then live. Like, she's very, very happy with the company. And that kind of leads me to the next thing I want to get to you with is KPIs. All right. You're talking about a woman who knows her KPIs. She does the trade show. She knows exactly who she needs to be talking to when it comes to this first. I mean, she can break all that down. So when it comes to kind of creating your own lane or cultivating your own future, can you kind of just speak on the importance of knowing what KPIs are? And then if it's something that you can do, that is going to be actually the thing that leads to longevity. So, the floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's two sides to KPIs. There's the objective KPIs. These are your numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sales goals, performance metrics, things like that, right? And these are what ultimately, whether we like it or not, a business owner or a senior leadership team
Yeah.
cares about, right? And it's their job to care about that, and that's okay,
Right.
because they have to maximize the business. The other KPIs that exist are more subjective, right? And this is things like company culture, employee happiness, employee development,
Mm-hmm.
things that don't have a hard number that you can put to them,
Right.
but are just as critical. And so, as a leader, right, there's different. I always look at KPIs in kind of a spectrum, right? So, depending on your role. So, our frontline people, they're worried about hitting their metrics because that's their job to do that,
Right.
right? As a frontline manager, I sit in a weird spot where I have to talk about metrics to my senior leadership team,
Mm-hmm.
but then I also have to manage people,
Right.
culture, the development, the personal issues, things like that
Mm-hmm.
on a people side of things. So my time as a frontline manager is often split between talking about numbers and talking about people, right? And sometimes balancing that can be, quite tricky. Is how do I translate my numbers requirements from the top down to human behaviors on the bottom?
Exactly. That is a very tricky aspect to it. And the acronym I personally have, it's called Swiftly: skilled workers, well-informed workers, front team workers, and then lift yourself. I think it is so important that you identify exactly which category a person is in so you can add the human element. If you got a skilled person that's out there crushing it, killing their sales and just naturally skilled, you may not need another salesperson. You may just want to create a foundation for that skilled worker, because if that skilled worker gets more skilled people around them, eventually they leave your company because they know they're good enough to do the job on their own, as opposed to staying with you. Now you may need well-informed people that put the skilled workers in the right position and fronting people. So that human element that you're talking about, again, it's so very crucial for the business owner to figure out. That's the job in itself. I get those hard numbers; they're important, and you got to look at them. I'm the first one to tell you your job as a business owner to make sure the money's coming in on a regular basis. But when you start adding the human element and you're adding people's other their agendas and their degrees and what they want to do with their life, that thing becomes really tricky. All right, guys, it becomes really tricky. And I've seen it happen. I've seen business owners lose their business overnight because they just blew off the human element to what people are when it comes to them applying to jobs and how they go about their day to day. So, with that, I do want to be very respectful of your time. Is there something that your company, is there like a unique thing that your company does that people, there's a lot of business owners that listen to the show. Is there like a specific thing that you, a business owner, would need when it comes to working with you? You can kind of put all that stuff out there now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I do manage a purpose partnership. We are a business and marketing strategic and tactical agency. So, we work with all kinds of businesses on, how to set up a marketing plan to social media management, website development, the whole nine. Public relations. We got a wonderful writing team that does a bunch of content, so blogs and
Mhm.
press releases and things like that. We also do some business coaching and leadership coaching as well. We have our ACEs leadership program where we can come into your company. Actually, personally, I come into your company, spend about 8 hours with all of your managers and people aspiring to be managers, and we go through our ACEs framework,
Mhm.
which is really about how do we tie leadership into people, and what does that look like, and how do we build culture around that while still we're being worried about the numbers and the KPIs. And so you can reach us at a purposepartnership.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably, according to my wife, I'm there way too much.
Right. Well, you're not on Instagram, but that's the better thing. So she knows you're out there grinding for it. You're trying grinding for the family.
Yeah, and if you're listening, send me a request to connect and just put Swiftly
Right.
in the notes there. That way I know that you listened to our episode, and let's have a conversation and see how we can partner with you and work with you to, build your business.
Absolutely. And all that will be included in the show notes as well. So, with all that, Adam, the way I close out all the shows is I have you, I want you to use your imagination just a little bit. You're the Adam you are now, running your own business, doing your thing, making things happen. Go back to the young Adam that was working at the call center, taking a lot of shit from his boss and all that. Pretend that that version of Adam has come into the Zoom room. Just give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close.
Yeah, I think number one is advocate for yourself, right? Find your path, figure out your path, and advocate for yourself to get there. And once you start doing that, and you stop and you listen to the feedback that you're getting during that journey, you set yourself up for success, right? And so, yeah, that's the biggest advice I have.
Advocate for yourself. Very, very true. Well, man, keep doing what you're doing, man. It was great having you on. Looking forward to keeping up with your journey. This is a lot of synergy here. And I'm looking forward to just helping as many business owners as I possibly can. It's the reason I got into business myself. So, all that being said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.